Now let us continue with our class on a journey to the West. And during our classes of remembering the journey that Phuntsok Rinpoche took to the West, we should also remember Phuntsok Rinpoche and to supplicate Phuntsok Rinpoche to think that we're traveling with Rinpoche to listening to the Dharma, to go abroad. We should uphold this kind of thinking. I think it would be very meaningful, though that we didn't finish everything within one class, but I think the content, though that we didn't finish each of the sessions that's taught by Rinpoche within every class, but I think the content is indeed very interesting for all of us to listen to. The teachings given by Phuntsok Rinpoche, I myself, seeing myself as someone who was there witnessing the whole situation, I indeed found that Phuntsok Rinpoche didn't need to prepare for the classes at all, and sometimes he would give us teachings that he had never taught before, and sometimes even the Dharma centers that he traveled to does not ask him to they did not prepare those topics and give it to him beforehand. Rather, he would just ask him to speak on certain topics, and Phuntsok Rinpoche would give teachings according to the situation. Phuntsok Rinpoche at the time was 60 years of age, and many of you probably had now comparing to those of you who had already been ordained for 20 to 30 years, and you probably studied for 20 to 30 years as well. Phuntsok Rinpoche only studied in Sertio for 6 years and returned to this area during the time of 10 years of the chaotic time of Cultural Revolution. Then within 20 years of his activity after that, he didn't really have the listening and contemplation, that kind of education anymore, but he would give teachings so spontaneously through his wisdom. Though many of you probably never met Phuntsok Rinpoche, but probably would feel that, wow, he's really quite something or someone, and probably would be able to discover priceless gems within the teachings he had given. Lots of the Dharma teachings given within this book are considered as profound Vajrayana teachings, and maybe you won't be able to right away understand it, but I had already transcribed it in Tibetan language and translated it into Chinese language, and I'm sure it will be of great benefit to those of you who wish to study Vajrayana. And I had already done that within a rather very quick period of time. Now, we had already spoken about Wurjin Rinpoche Pamasambhava, where it speaks of the four Vidyadharas and the teachings given by the four Vidyadharas. The empowerments, Vimala Nyingthig, the Bima Nyingthig, and some of the commentaries on it. I think we had already received empowerments and oral transmission. Let's continue. Over here it says that one of the two who had not entered into the rainbow light was ordinary Rinpoche Pamasambhava, who never entered into Parinirvana, but lives as a king of Rakshasas in Kamara Dvipa. The other is Vimalamitra. He remains at Mount Wutai in China without abandoning his fleshly body and manifests a real emanation in the land of Tibet once every 100 years. It is said that Vimalamitra, in fact, after every 100 years, he would manifest Nirmanakaya in the land of Tibet. Lama Achu Rinpoche, as well as Lama Iko and Yangtang, Toko Yangtang, also is said to be manifestation of Vimalamitra. Back in 1987, along with the tens of thousands of Tibetans, I made a pilgrimage to Mount Wutai and paid homage to Vimalamitra. Phuntsok Rinpoche said, during our stay, some people saw Vimalamitra and Manjushri in the sky. Back in 1986, Phuntsok Rinpoche said that Vimalamitra and Manjushri invited him to Mount Wutai within the pure vision of Phuntsok Rinpoche. After we arrived there are people who would say that, I see Vimalamitra right on top of your crown. There was a Chinese monk who would tell Phuntsok Rinpoche, saying that there is Vimalamitra, there is King Gesar as well. There are probably people who would be able to see those kinds of wondrous scenes. Some monks and some people would go to. There was a time a patient was at the corner of the Bodhisattva peak, and people didn't know who he was. But some monks said that he was the manifestation of Vimalamitra, and I wasn't so sure. Anyhow, at that time, many people saw different kinds of signs and lights. For example, some people saw lions, rainbows, magnificent images of people and birds, and those auspicious signs. Even till today, people who make pilgrimage to Mount Wutai continue to see such kinds of auspicious signs. When we in fact, later I made another trip with a group of the staff members to Mount Wutai again back in 2017. When we went there, it was rather quite tight in terms of policy and environment, the freedom to travel around. We made aspirations in the morning of 4 or 5 a.m. and people asked me to give them the oral transmission of Dzogchen Nyingthig. And we were seen by an old monk. He didn't allow me to finish my chanting of the king aspiration. He asked me to go, and I had to leave. Initially, I thought it would be a good coincidence to complete my 30 years of service to the Han Sangha. And then I thought to conclude my service and rededicate the merit. And then I would engage in solitary retreat. But then that old monk pushed me away, didn't let me to finish chanting the king aspiration. Our chant leader was quite persistent, and she insisted to finish the whole chanting, but I didn't finish chanting. And then later I thought to myself that I should be quite grateful to that old monk, otherwise I was not going to give teachings to the Dudum Ling over here, to the Chinese Sangha. Anyhow, the old monk stopped me from making my rededication of merit. I'm not too sure if he was the manifestation of Vimalamitra.
到藏地就是那个接真僧伽王续 就是赐予了这个官地
the later time in Tibet, Vimalamitra emanated an illusory body from his primordial wisdom in front of Jetsun Sengye Wanchuk in Tibet, and bestowed upon him his entire empowerment, guidance, and peaceful instructions. Once, when Jetsun Sengye Wanchuk was making a togal offering among 100,000 dakinis, his physical body dissolved into a light sphere. The manifestation the manifestation of Jetsun Sengye Wanchuk was Jayang Khenpo Wanchuk, and then later he, from his memory, wrote down, I think in the 4th stop, when we study the history part of Jetsun Nyingthig, there's the teaching upon that, on that part. Many people now have already acquired the empowerment of the peaceful monastery as well as the 4 Nyingthig. So it will be good for you to read into it later. Thus, the the great Dzogchen masters appeared in the world one after another, and along with that, there also emerged great numbers of practitioners who followed them to practice Dzogchen and attained a rainbow body. For example, it is well known that 100,000 practitioners accomplished a rainbow body in the same period of time at Gatok Monastery in Kham. Some may question that, well, at that time, I don't think 100,000 would be able to attain rainbow body, because at that time, the entire population of Tibetans were about only 6 million. Then 100,000 is definitely not possible. But that was recorded in the history. It was recorded in the Gaja history of Tibetan Buddhism. And then there are stories of, for example, practitioners who attained a rainbow body. For instance, there was an old layman from Yilong in Dege named Sonam Namgyal, who had accomplished the rainbow body through practicing the great perfection. Sonam Namgyal, his shortened form of the name is Sogyal. This particular story also was included in His Holiness's book. His Holiness Dudjom Rinpoche's book, Nyingthig School of Tibetan Buddhism, is fundamental, and history mentioned him. The place where my Buddhist Institute is located today is the mountain hermitage where Khenpo Dudjom Rinpoche's predecessor, Dudjom Limpa, and his disciple resided most of the time. It was at this place 13 disciples of Dudjom Limpa accomplished rainbow bodies at the same time, and the names of those disciples are included in the history, also in the teachings given by Dudjom Limpa. I had translated it into Chinese language as well. In monasteries across the land of Tibet, there have been many practitioners who achieved a rainbow body, or had at least at the time of their death shrank their bodies to small size. And this type of miraculous appearances happened till the present day. Even in Doma Monastery, in my monastery, there were about 13 or 12 practitioners who also attained a rainbow body. It was included in a record as well. And those history records were not written by the present-day people. It was a faithful record back then. Many different monasteries had those kinds of miracles. It is said that there are about 60% of Dzogchen practitioners have achieved apparent signs of spiritual attainment through practicing the great perfection. Well, from what we know now, people who had received pith instructions and guidance from Phuntsok Rinpoche, at the time of parting from this world, there are various kinds of auspicious signs would appear. And a majority of people, there are over about 60% of people had attained rainbow body or attained the auspicious signs. So majority of people. It is said that if out of 10 passing people, 6 people would show signs of auspicious signs. At time of Phuntsok Rinpoche's parinirvana, or before Phuntsok Rinpoche's parinirvana, there are people who passed away and they showed signs of auspiciousness, and even after the passing, there are also lots of people who show the signs of auspicious signs as well. As a practitioner, these kinds of auspicious signs are important, because if one were not to demonstrate any signs, then maybe that person doesn't have any kinds of realization. But that is not 100% certain either, because some of the signs may not necessarily be seen or be shown in this particular lifetime. All the way from ancient time till now, those who practice the great Dzogchen practice, they continuously to demonstrate the signs of accomplishment. So now we have already received so many great faith instructions and guidance, and for those of you who have great faith towards the Dharma teachings and the Guru, I'm sure their ways of looking at birth, old age, sickness, and death would be completely different. And because of the great blessings of Mahati, we would be able to see that they are quite the great practitioners have been influenced by the great blessings of Mahati, and we can definitely see that uncommon signs of Ati. And then let us look at the next one, the extraordinary attributes of the great perfection. Then you may ask, so in what approach can we learn the teachings of great perfection? The answer is that if you want to extensively study the great perfection, you could refer to the 11 topics of Dzogchen. If you wish to read into that part, you can look at the teachings Phuntsok Rinpoche had given in France. When I read into it, in fact, the teaching was so extraordinary and so excellent. I'm quite impressed by the teaching given by Phuntsok Rinpoche. Just imagine that he had given the entire teaching within one breath, one could say. The teachings of the 11 topics are still existent nowadays, the audio that is. And if you can memorize it, if you can, or if you can give the concise teaching of that, it would be quite difficult. But the main teaching is of the Trekcho and the togal practice. Now, regarding to the Trekcho, which refers to the actual practice of ascending the view to all phenomena are empty in nature, the essential pith instruction that falls into the category of Trekcho are practiced in their own forms by all schools, such as Shakya, Nyingma, Kagyu, Gelug, and so forth. For example, the supreme medicinal nectar by Lama Tsongkhapa of Sarma tradition is identical to the fundamental teachings of Nyingma. Nyingma's great perfection from its beginning to the end. Not only that, many practitioners in the lineage of Tsongkhapa, such as Chankya Rinpoche Dorje, have also accomplished spiritual attainment by practicing the great perfection. Sometimes I really want to translate the Doha songs by Chankya Rinpoche Dorje, but the translation would be a bit difficult. His Doha songs are really well known, very famous. Even Nipa Rinpoche, he himself made a commentary of the Doha songs. We know that he had attained perfect enlightenment, and this is the first one. He had accomplished spiritual attainment by practicing the great perfection. Now, comparatively, the practice of Togal is a unique practice that no other school has. The great perfection has 4 types of uncommon practices. Then Jampo Shinyin divided the 6.4 million stanzas of Dzogchen into the 3 categories: outer category of mind, the inner category of space, sacred category of pith instructions, and then Sri Sangha further classified the category of pith instruction into 4 cycles: outer, inner, secret, and quintessential. Except for the innermost Nyingthig teachings, none of the other great perfection doctrines teaches the practice of Togal. Not all categories have the pith instruction. It is only in the innermost Nyingthig teachings there is the practice of Togal. To put it simply, in terms of actual practice, Trekcho and Togal are the 2 core training paths in great perfection. They are clearly taught in Nyingthig Yapshi. Initially, the Nyingthig teachings were brought into this world and transmitted in the land of Tibet by Pamasambhava and Vimalamitra. These are known as Padma Nyingthig and Khandro Nyingthig and Vima Nyingthig, respectively, because there are the initial Nyingthig teachings propagated in Tibet. These 2 are called the Mother Nyingthig. We had spoken about this when we studied the 4 Nyingthig. Afterwards, the omniscient Longchenpa composed Lama Nyingthig, a commentary and offspring of Vima Nyingthig. That is Khandro Nyingthig, a commentary and offspring of Khandro Nyingthig, as well as a condensation and important pith instruction of the 2 mother Nyingthig texts known as Zamolgynthic profound quintessence. Then the two mother Nyingthig and their two commentaries known as child Nyingthig are collectively called Nyingthig Yapji, 4 sections of the heart essence. Why is that it is not called the 5 Nyingthig, then you may wonder. It is because there are essentially the 4 Nyingthigs. It is, if you were to condense them further, in the most profound Nyingthig at the time, it can be condensed into the most profound Nyingthig. When we were having the empowerment, because there were lots of content within the empowerments, that is the profound Nyingthig. And then all training techniques in Buddhism can be acquired through 2 ways of transmissions.
所讲的密有没有密雷呢？就是刚才是说的是，有。
Explanatory transmission and oral transmission. Oral transmission means to transmit teachings that are classified at sacred cycle or more advanced teachings to only a small number of fortunate disciples. The explanatory transmission refers to the case in which, when attendees are all suitable Dharma vessels, the teaching could be conducted to a large audience. In terms of Dzogchen teachings, great masters only transmitted the great perfection to a few individual person to person rather than to a large audience. Since the time of Lung Chenpa, more people have become suitable vessels for Dzogchen. Therefore, if Master is an accomplished one and all disciples are qualified, the Master can impart Dzogchen teachings to hundreds of thousands of disciples at once. Nowadays, in the land of Tibet, many realized lamas give teachings to a large audience. Likewise, in India and other places, such as Gyudrum Rinpoche, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, Rinpoche, and many great masters have bestowed empowerments of Rinchen Terzok and Nyingthig Yapji to large gatherings of people in various occasions. Some people may question, why do they transmit so publicly? This is because there were only very few qualified disciples in the past, but now there are a great number of people who are suitable Dharma vessels for receiving these profound teachings. You may start to have some misgivings. According to the Buddha's teaching, before appearance of Buddha Maitreya, as time passed by, the world system and time degenerated to become more chaotic. The karma and fortune of sentient beings decline rather than improve. Why is the noble Dharma that is suitable for beings becoming more available? People may have this kind of question, and then Phuntsok Rinpoche gave a rather very unusual answer. Why it is the Dzogchen teachings more prevalent and given more publicly nowadays. He said that according to the view of general tantras, as afflictive emotions of sentient beings become stronger, the Dharma must become more profound to resolve these afflictions. In other words, when Dharma gets more profound, it indicates that the afflictive emotions of sentient beings are becoming stronger. When sentient beings are carried away by distraction unceasingly, only Dharma that strikes the vital point will be effective. Generally speaking, Kriya Tantra or Action Tantra is the lowest among all tantras. It is most popular when lifespan of human is limitless, and then when lifespan of human beings decreases to 80,000 years, Charya Tantra or Conduct Tantra blossoms vigorously. When human lifespan shrinks to 30,000 years, Yoga Tantra is the most prevalent. Afterwards, when the 5 aspects of degeneration and strife become rampant, the highest Yoga Tantra flourishes. Now, this is exactly completely reversed of the Sutrayana. It is that when the time has not degenerated, then the teachings doesn't need to be that profound. But the more degenerated, the more chaotic, the more afflictive, then sentient beings would need more profound teachings. The more degenerated the time is, the more profound the tantra there is to fit the need of sentient beings. Finally, when human lifespan lessens to only 10 years of age, the great perfection will become more popular than ever. At that time, a Dakini named Dakini Paldzin will teach the great perfection, and anyone who sees, hears, remembers, or comes into contact with this teaching will be liberated. Meanwhile, any other doctrines would become less and less effective as the time degenerates. In fact, Phuntsok Rinpoche also said that his teachings are just like the stars, are just like the other Dharma teachings are just like the stars that can hardly dispel the darkness. However, the Dharma teachings of the great perfection would be able to dispel the darkness of the mind stream of sentient beings, just like the bright sun. That is why, as Jigme Rinpoche said, when the world is enveloped in the darkness of degeneration and decline, such as the degeneration of view of sentient beings, of lifespan, of afflictions, when everything is in great darkness, then the enlightened activities of Padmasambhava will become as brilliant as the moon. We should stop here today.